Welcome back to another episode of We Don't Know What to Watch, and welcome back to another one of our special giant size specials. What number are we on?
Well, like 7, 8, something.
Well, giant size holiday special number one. Just call every comic number one so you can sell more copies, right?
I I I have it all organized somewhere.
I'm sure you do.
This is our first giant. We kind of do the holiday special sporadically. This is our first Christmas one.
hmm Unless you count
And
Batman Returns.
what's that?
Unless you count Batman Returns.
That's true. That actually, we may have labeled that one as a Christmas movie because
We,
it is.
no, we've only been doing it for like what, 50 episodes or something? I don't know.
Yeah, we've got of our flagship show, we've got about like 56 episodes, I think.
Oh, okay.
So we've been doing this for a while. What did we choose for this? This is those rare ones where we choose the movie. We do know what to watch.
We do know what to watch on these special episodes. And this one, we decided to go with the perennial holiday classic, Die Hard. No, it's a Wonderful Life.
It is a wonderful life,
All
and
right.
we'll get into how much of a Christmas movie this really is.
hmm
Uh, but it is one of those that people watch yearly at Christmas. So, a little bit about the film first before we get into the actual film. Based off of a story, The Greatest Gift. It was actually this short story that someone wrote in like 1943, and he couldn't get it sold to publishers or anything. So then he wrote it in like Christmas cards or something like that. It was like a Christmas story that he sent out to like 200 people.
Yeah. So imagine you gonna get like a Christmas card from a friend, then like they sent you like this 21-page short story.
Yeah.
You actually read it.
Yeah, I probably not.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. I wonder how many of these copies went unread because like, oh, okay, whatever.
Yeah. So,
It's like it's because he's like you barely have time, or you can barely bother to read like the one-page Christmas letter that some people send out this time of year.
yeah. But it got passed around. It ended up at a studio, and several hands were on it. There were several scripts written, and eventually Frank Capra, took the core of the story. And I think it's quite different, but the core of the story is there. And you can't really talk about this film without going into a little bit of history of Frank Capra.
Mm-hmm.
And he was an Italian immigrant. His family moved to the United States when he was 6, and they moved straight out west. And I think they knew like one person out there that they could stay with or whatever. Blah blah blah. And he wanted to get. I think he went to college and all that. I mean, like he didn't use his craft. And I was watching, and it might have been in the American Dreams documentary that I watched, that he talked about how he got into film to begin with. And I don't think it was I don't remember if it was him or if it was his son who told the story in something I watched. He was poor and living in an apartment, and he sees an ad for someone wants some help on a movie somewhere. And so he goes, yeah. And this was down in like San Francisco or San Diego or something like that. I don't remember which one. But he tells the guy, yeah, I'm Frank Capra from Hollywood, even though he's never touched a movie before in his life. And
Nice.
the guy goes, okay, well, here's the script for this, and take it and then come back, and you know I need someone to direct this movie or whatever. And so he takes it, and I think it was him that was telling the story, because he says, I was just going to throw the script away, and because he got uh, um he told the guy, yeah, I don't read scripts, for free. So the guy gave him $10 to read the script and come back and direct the movie. And so he's like,
Nice.
I was just going to take the $10 and throw away the script, but I thought I'd check it out. And he goes, oh, I'll try this out. And he goes back the next day and gets a camera. And he said, as soon as I got behind the camera, I just knew how to do it. It just was something I just knew how to do. And so he made this film with this guy, and then eventually they like took it up to Hollywood to sell it. And he said he went to the guy who wanted to make this movie and said, I got to tell you something. If we take it up here, I'm not actually a Hollywood director. And the guy goes, well, yeah, I know. the day I gave you the script, I called Hollywood and no one had ever heard of you. And he goes, but I liked your attitude and I liked your drive, so thought I'd give you a chance.
Like the cut of your jib.
I like the cut of your jib. So I thought that was a really cool story, though. Just like, he just faked his way in, and the guy just liked his, his attitude and his drive and everything, and said, "I'll just give this guy a chance. I know he's lying to me, but why not?" And that's how we got Frank Capra. And what really gets me about Capra is his movies are pure Americana, and he's an immigrant. He's an Italian immigrant. And I think he makes movies that are it's almost like what ideal America is. And it comes from an immigrant, and like, rather than actual, natural born citizens. And I love that. I love that, because he came in and he worked hard and he did this, and he made his way. And apparently he always thought of himself as kind of like a failure. Like, he never thought he did things correct and all that. And especially since he didn't go into his vocation. I don't remember what it was he wanted to go into, but he went into filmmaking instead. So like, he considered himself a failure, but he made some of the most Americana movies that you can imagine. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. So,
Yeah.
Mr. Deeds. Oh, is it Mr. Deeds Goes to Town? And then you've got one of the all-time great romantic comedies that started all romantic comedies, That Happened One Night. So, and then he enlisted in the army, and World War II comes around, and he goes to war, and him and several other directors. There's actually a great book called Five Came Back, and I think he's one of them that's in that book. It's George Stevens, William Wyler.
I know John Ford,
Another John Huston. And was Frank Capra the fifth, or was it a different? And he just happened to also be. I don't remember, but he was one of those that went to war, and he made, the war propaganda films for the U.S. And what he did was he turned the German propaganda on the Germans, because he would use some of the horrific stuff that they'd put in their films and use it to show how horrifying the Germans were. And the Nazis and everything. And so then when he came back, he did not want to do a war film, and that's what was being made at the time. And so, because he hated the war, and he said in an interview that he hated humanity at the time of the war. He just hated humans. He hated the war. He hated everything about it.
I mean, fair enough.
Yeah, and especially what he saw, and especially with those films he had to make and everything. And then he came back. He's like, I do not want to make a war film. So he also didn't want to work for the studios anymore. I don't remember which studio he was with before the war, but he came back, and with another guy, he created Liberty Films. And Liberty Films only made 2 movies, this one and State of the Union, before it was bought out by Paramount and then eventually dissolved a few years later. And so he made this film. It was from his own production company, and he's often said, and this sounds like almost narcissistic, but like he was one of those. I know there's hundreds of people that make a film and this and that and the story and all that, and he says, but there's one person who should be behind the whole thing, and that's why. And then he even wrote an autobiography called The Name Above the Title. Because if you notice, all of his movies is Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life, Frank Capra's Mr. Smith, and a Frank Capra movie when you see one.
Frank Capra's Breakin' 2 Electric Boogaloo.
Breakin' 2 Electric Boogaloo.
Frank Capra's Secret of the Ooze.
So he's got a really interesting history. And this film, as beloved as it is, did not do well at the box office. It did not pull back, and that's part of why Liberty Films eventually got sold, because they didn't they didn't even make their costs on this, their, what do you want to call it?
Budget.
Their budget. So it was well received, but it kind of was in and out of the theaters in a couple months, and people forgot about it. And then what happened was, in the 70s, the copyright was up, and apparently due to a clerical error or something like that, the movie slipped into public domain, so TV stations could run it whenever they wanted without paying for it. And it got ran so much on television in the 70s that it started becoming like just a tradition to watch it at Christmas, and eventually became the classic that it is because it ended up in public domain.
Yeah, it's kind of similar, at least from a copyright standpoint, of the reason why that A Christmas Story became more well known. It didn't necessarily do super well in theaters when it first came out, but also because it was because Ted Turner bought the film lineup before like 1984 or something, and then that was the movie that he had that he could run really cheaply on TV.
Yeah. Yeah, growing up I remember, boy, like Christmas Story, what was it like? Yeah, Turner, because it was either on his TNT channel or his TBS. Um, they'd run it for 24 hours on Christmas Day.
They still do.
Do they still do that? Okay.
Yes.
I cut the cord like 15, 20 years ago, so I don't have cable anymore. So I suppose I could just get the DVD and run it on a loop for 24 hours.
I'm not sure why you would, but okay.
Yeah.
Would you still like take edit in your own commercial breaks?
Yes, yes, of course. To pad it out to 2 hours so like it'd be an even 2 hour. So yeah, interesting history on this film. Film itself. It's a nice Christmas film, right? About a man who wants to kill himself.
Yeah, and it is so much of this film is, I guess, set up about this life of George Bailey, played by the incredible Jimmy Stewart, who is Jimmy Stewart, and he's a great actor and was one of my and is one of my favorites.
And if he's not one of your favorites, I don't know.
Then you're a terrible person.
You are a terrible person. Because I think like in real life, I think he was just a genuinely cool guy too. And
Mhm.
just he actually went to the war too, and this was his first film after coming back from the war. And I guess I was also hearing that like he came back and was not sure about going back into acting again, and and Capra came to him with this, and he said, I, I watched they showed clips of both Capra telling this story and Jimmy Stewart telling this story, and um, Capra's like, "Yeah, I've got this story. I don't know if you'll think it's any good, but it's about a guy who uh, wants to get out of town. He's in a small town. He wants to get out of town. His dad dies, so like he has to take over the building alone, and then he, you know." Finally gets down on his luck, wants to kill himself, and an angel comes and shows him what life would have been without it. And he's like, blah blah blah. He goes, I don't. And apparently Jimmy Stewart's like, yeah, I want to do that movie with you because he'd worked with Capra before. He's like, yeah, I want to work with Frank Capra. Like,
Mhm.
you're doing this movie, it's going to be good. And this is actually one that Capra has been known to say was his favorite film of his own. But yeah, Jimmy Stewart, wonderful actor, plays George Bailey.
And yeah, I guess we can start going through the plot. This movie starts with sort of the town and Christmas, and then sort of the weird angelic space plot.
Yeah, that started us out because they're talking to Clarence the angel. Hey Clarence, come over here. You want to earn your wings? Go
Yeah,
help
yeah,
this
yeah.
dude. Oh, where's he at? Oh, he's down there. Oh, there's just a kid there. Oh no, we're going to show you what happened when he was a kid, and then we're going to go through his whole life story here.
Mhm. See how we got to this point where he wants to die.
Yeah, and
Yeah, and it's everything seems to come back. We see first him as a kid, where he helps out. He's where he saves his brother from falling into the ice, but then loses hearing in one ear.
and then he stops old man Bauer, from poisoning a client because he works at the pharmacy.
Hmm.
And it's been pointed out that the telegram that Bowers gets that says his son has died of influenza, so like he's sad and ends up mixing up a wrong
Hmm.
batch for someone. It's dated 1919, so while George Bailey is a kid, this is 1919, the second year of the Spanish flu, and
What are
his
your
son
what are your
dies of influenza. So you can imply that it was the Spanish flu that killed him.
Yeah, I mean, wear your damn mask.
Yeah. So this movie does tie in to 2020.
It's all connected.
it's it's all connected. It's the beginning of the story all comes from a
Mhm.
kid dying of the Spanish flu. But it kind of just shows how good of a person George Bailey was from the get go.
Then he gets older, wants to leave, go to school. He's finally been able to go to college after saving up some money. Oh, and then like his dad, and then he has to try and help out the bank and building a loan with his dad because the evil Mr. Potter, who's just this nasty, nasty guy. Lionel Barrymore plays this well because you hate this character so much. He is almost cartoonishly evil, but then you realize like, yeah, I could see that.
Well, yeah, because he revels in it, because he's got a line in there. He goes, "The people of this town hate me, but I don't like them either, so it all works out."
Yeah, that's a good joke.
So yeah, he's great. And this movie is filled with like great character actor moments. Like just the small characters too.
Like Ernie the cab driver.
Yeah, and Uncle Billy.
I wrote in my notes so many times, fire Uncle Billy. So many of the problems in this film wouldn't have happened if they just would have fired Uncle Billy.
Yeah. Played by Thomas Mitchell. I don't really know him from anything else. I think I saw he was in Stagecoach as well, but yeah, he was great in the film though. That scene where he's drunk and like he's gonna go home. Which hat is mine? It's the middle one. It's great. And then he walks off scene and runs into a trash can or something. And I was reading or saw somewhere that, and again, I don't know how much of this is true, but apparently there was a PA over on the side who dumped a tray of something when this happened, and like uh Jimmy Stewart started laughing, and Uncle Billy off on the side improved the line, "Oh, I'm okay, it's all right," and Frank Capra apparently like loved this whole bit and went over and paid the guy who dumped the tray $10 for making the sound better.
Nice.
I hope that story is true because that's wonderful.
It is a great story.
But yeah, so Uncle Billy is great, even though his character, yeah, I agree with you. It's like, he works at the bank because of nepotism, because his brother runs the building and loan, and it's like, why are you giving this guy who ties ropes on his fingers to remember
Who's known
things,
to be forgetful, who, it doesn't answer the phone when the bank examiner comes, just to.
and he is technically the reason George Bailey decides to kill himself. It's
Yeah,
like,
fire Uncle Billy, none of this would have happened.
yeah. So, but yeah, because everything comes at like just everything comes to stop George Bailey from getting out of town. You know,
Yeah, and he's just always putting others before himself because
he's
I guess he's just a good person, even when he probably shouldn't.
he's a
When
very selfless character.
hmm Even when he really does want to leave and finally go to college, and then instead he ends up working at the saving and loan, and then he uses the money that he had for college, gives it to his brother, who he knows went to college, and his brother comes home married, so then he stays at the saving and loan.
Yeah, and then when he was first going to leave, it was, and it kind of coincides how they did this. When he's a kid, it's 1919, and you've got the kid dying of the Spanish flu. Then you come to him wanting to leave the town, and he ends up not leaving because there's a run on the bank. It's and you can imply that this is
Yeah,
close
he's
to
about
the
to leave
great.
on his honeymoon, the poor guy, and then there's a run on the bank, or then like he's about to leave to go on a big trip, and his dad has a stroke. He's about to
Yeah, and so then like I think the Great Depression rolls into
about
this.
to
Then the
close on
war
the
comes
bank.
in.
Mr. Potter's trying to kill this bank, kill the building and loan, but then he stays because that's the only way the board of directors will keep him or keep him going.
Yeah, and of course it's the big corporate banks are bad, and this comes from you can tell this comes from Capra's personal experience too, because if you notice, his movies have this theme of like the big guys being these bad guys, like the banks and government and all this stuff, but like that you get that altruistic person to come in there and they overcome and they defeat this with
You can make it. You can do it in a better way.
yeah, and this run on the bank, his family, I guess, was evicted by a bank from their home when something happened, and it was and the story was something about like something happened that they didn't pay the bill, but they thought they had, and it might have been when his father died or something like that, and his father paid all the finances, so
Hmm.
they forgot to pay, and then they got booted. Their house got foreclosed.
Does that mean Uncle Billy was a real person?
I must have been. But so this is not the first time that he's used this theme of the bank being the bad guy, but then there's being, like you can change it from within, because the end of this story is very similar to an earlier film called American Madness, which is also a very good film. Um,
Is Jimmy Stewart in that one?
no,
No,
but Jimmy Stewart is in other Frank Capra films, such
that's
as
true.
Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, which is also a fantabulous movie,
And Heaven Can Wait.
which was not a Capra movie, but or was
No,
it?
no, there was a Capra movie called like no, All That Heaven Allows or something was a Capra one.
Okay. And then even the guy who's been driven down to the point of near suicide has been explored before, like in Meet John Doe,
Hmm.
another Capra film. The end of the movie, the guy wants to end his life up on the bell tower there. So he has explored some similar themes before, but he brought them together in this wonderful life. It's a wonderful life.
Yes, and the biggest singing point is that people know George Bailey and people care about him because he's a good man who's always been there to help for him. Like when he talked about when there's a run on the bank, he's able to give them like, listen, guys, we don't have this kind of money. This isn't such and such's house, so this isn't. That's how it works. I can give you guys just enough to get by, and that'll be fine.
Yeah, and
And then he
and I
even lets
like that it's even his wife, played by Donna Reed, who we haven't mentioned. This is her first starring role. She is the one who says, "We've got $2,000 for our honeymoon here." Like, she doesn't say that, but she just goes, "We've got $2,000. What do you need to get by?" And then so they both do that. And another story that I hope is true that I heard on that scene. The part where the woman asked for 1750. Well, it's in the script that she is supposed to ask for $17. And they did the scene a few times. They rehearsed it with her saying $17. And then apparently, again, I want this story to be true. Capra pulled the woman aside before they filmed the scene for real and said, "Tell him that you want some odd number like 1750." And so she goes up to the thing, and it says, "I need $17.50." And apparently Jimmy Stewart's reaction was legitimate. Like, he was thrown off guard and leaned over and kissed her on the cheek, which was completely like just it was just Jimmy Stewart doing that. Like, and so they kept it in there
oh,
because it fit the character as well.
I hope it's yeah, that's a story that I hope is true.
So you never know with like these old Hollywood films, like when stories have been embellished and all that stuff. So, but like some of those stories are just like, I really hope that's true, because that's just a fun kind.
We talk about Ernie the taxi driver, how he's a really nice guy and always around,
Yeah, yeah, he's just constantly driving up and down the one street of Bedford Falls.
and his friend Bert the cop.
Yeah, Bert and Ernie, the original Bert and Ernie.
Okay, so apparently this was, I mean, there's been a long-standing rumor that, Bert and Ernie were named after these two characters. The Bert and Ernie, the puppet, the Muppets.
Yeah, yeah,
But from what I understand, it's probably just coincidental.
I'm sure probably, but it's kind of fun though, and
Yeah,
and
you
I
never
like this.
know.
And they've even got fun scenes too, because as the character actors, because you've got the girl Violet. Donna Reed plays Mary, and then there's I don't remember the actress who plays Violet, but Violet is in love with she likes George Bailey, and so the whole movie she's trying to get with him too. And she's this pretty blonde girl, and she's walking down the street when Bailey's there with Bert and Ernie. And I love this scene because Bailey says something about, "Oh, I love that dress you're wearing," and she does the flip the hair. And, "Oh, this little old thing, I only wear this when I don't care what I look like." And she walks down the street, and you see people gawking. One guy almost gets hit by a car because he's looking back at her, and then the cop, and then the cop goes, I gotta go. I gotta go see what my wife's up to." I just
Good idea, Bert.
Just little character moments like that, like Uncle Billy with his "Which hat is mine?" and him, and then I love the scene when he finally meets. Well, let's go into Jimmy Stewart and Donna Reed, because Jimmy Stewart he shows a lot of bitterness in this movie, and I like that about the character because he really wants to leave the town, and he ignores Mary through the whole thing, and even is like, she's kind of like hinting at him, and he's going, "I'm getting out. You know what I'm going to do with the rest of my life," Mary. Uh, and she's thinking, "Yeah, marry me." And he's like, "I'm getting out of this town."
Yeah, one scene that I really like was when she's finally sort of like, "Listen, you dummy." When she finally, like, after, Harry comes home from college or whatever, then he's like, finally goes sees Mary. She had just gotten home from college as well to see, and then she calls him over. It's like, "Oh yeah, your mother said you were coming over." Like, I didn't say that.
Yeah, and that whole scene there,
And he's like, "What's going on down there?" "Oh, he's making violent love to me, mother."
yeah, and you see that like he's just oblivious to the fact that like she's totally in love with him, because their first date when they walk back from the pool, which the pool scene was great, and he says something about, "I'm gonna lasso the moon for you," and it was just a throwaway line to him, but then years later she has a drawing of that, and then she puts on the record that they were singing that night, and he walks in, doesn't even realize it's the same song, and in the lasso picture he's like, "What's this?" And and then finally, like, they get on the phone with the guy who wants to marry Mary, and Wainwright, hee haw Wainwright. We'll talk about that in a minute.
He in the funny papers.
uh, that scene on the phone where he's like, still like, I don't want to be in this town. I want to go explore. I don't want into plastics. I don't want the bail and bond or the building and loan. I don't want to marry anybody. And then he starts kissing her. Is like, it's like he's trying to. It's almost like he has been in love with her this whole time, but he's been trying to fight it so hard because he doesn't want to be stuck in this town.
Hmm.
And it's a good scene because he's like, I don't want any of this, but you know what? It's what's gonna happen. It's just what's gonna happen.
And I love how even when he doesn't want to be involved with something like plastics, he's even still thinking of the town, like, "Hey, well, why don't you come do it here? We got like an old iron melting thing that was closed
Yeah,
down a while back."
he wants
Even
to
when
get out of
he's
the
not even
town so
thinking of it,
bad, but it's
he's
his
still a
own.
selfless person.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Now, he's still a selfless person, even when he isn't thinking about it on purpose. He's just like, it's just kind of who he is.
Yeah, and that's kind of the reason he can't get out of the town, is because he cares about everyone so much that he puts everyone else before himself, and then he gets really ticked off that that's happening, because it's like, well, you would too if, like, they just expect that of him. It's like, "Oh, your dad died. You're taking over the building, right? Because you're George Bailey." And it's like, "Yeah, I am, cuz I'm George Bailey. I guess I'm not getting out again." But finally, then you kind of progress, and they have kids, and kind of time lapses, and then Uncle Billy loses $8,000 that Mr. Potter steals from him in the bank.
Once again, fire Uncle Billy.
Fire Uncle Billy. And then he's like, that's the last straw, because it's like he realizes that he's basically done. Like, he's going to jail. He's lost all the money. His business is going under. Like, and the watching that scene of him coming home after realizing the money's gone was kind of heartbreaking, watching it as a father, because he's so devastated by the loss of that money and what it means, and how that's going to ruin his life, that like he starts yelling at his kids. And and I can relate, because there are times when you get so uh, I mean, if you get down, and your kids are like, "Hey daddy, hey daddy, hey daddy," and like you yell at them, and it's like, "Oh my god, I just took that out of," like, I'm yelling at my kid because I'm dealing with something else, and they're just being a kid. They're just, and like he's yelling at his daughter for practicing the piano, and it's so heartbreaking, and then he finally realizes it is himself, and like when he breaks down, he's like, "I'm sorry, you play whatever song you want to play. I'm sorry," it's and then he has to leave the house, and when he sits at that bar and starts praying, because he's just like, it's all over. It really is heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's really great acting from Jimmy Stewart at that point.
I heard some of that too. Was some of those tears were real because he was thinking about his war experience and all the friends that he lost when I think he was in the Air Force, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and that could be, I bet. So that's and that's, I mean, that's what you got to do is take those life experiences, because that scene that in the house and going to the bar were really great scenes from him. And then he meets Clarence the Angel because he wants to go jump off a bridge, but Clarence jumps first and he has to save him.
Because he knows that even at his lowest point, he will still put someone else before because that's who George Bailey is.
Yeah, exactly. And my thing with this scene though is if he dives in there and is able to get him out, how is that going to kill himself? He's just like he's going to jump in and then he's just going to be like treading water because you're
I
not going
guess
to.
he'd probably choose to drown on purpose. I don't know, whatever.
But I mean, regardless, yeah, he saves Clarence, and then you get the whole scene of them warming themselves. And I like the guy who, wherever they're at, the guy who is letting them warm in his house or
It's
whatever.
just like a
It's
toll booth at the bridge.
Oh yeah, and he's just sitting and listening to the conversation of Clarence telling George Bailey that he's an angel, just like, what am I listening to? And finally, he's like, I gotta get out of here. What is this craziness? But yeah, he's just like, I'm an angel. I don't have my wings yet. Or no, Bailey's like, why don't you have your wings? You must be a cut rate angel, second rate angel. It's like, yeah, I don't have my wings yet. That's why I was sent down here to save you.
Why you jumped in the water? No, I jumped in the water because it kept you from jumping in. I knew you would save me.
Yeah. So I love the little scene where where Clarence is just kind of looks up and goes, how am I doing, guys? Clarence is good, played by Henry Travers.
Hmm.
I think he was one of the professors in Ball of Fire, which I mentioned in a What You Watching episode, which is a high recommend.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely
he's
good character actor.
yeah,
Very charming.
and he's really good in this. Everyone's so good in this movie. It
Hmm.
really pulls it together, and glued together by Jimmy Stewart's performance.
And then, George Bailey says those magic words, I wish I had never been born. Pretty much.
Yeah, so then we get the part that everyone remembers. Uh, the whole Potterville goes back into town, and you get this whole rundown of he's talking to everybody, and they're like, "I don't know you," and his brother's not around because he wasn't there to
Yeah, look
save
at you.
him.
It's like wife divorced me 3 years ago and took the kid. Everyone's, even someone like Ernie, the taxi driver, who seems like a really nice guy, is just bitter.
Yeah. And the old pharmacist is now like a drunk that everyone hates because he killed someone with poison because George Bailey wasn't there to save that kid, or that kid, and he wasn't there to save his brother, so therefore his brother wasn't there to save all those people that he saved in the war. And then Donna Reed's not around, or did she marry someone else or
No,
something?
she never
Oh,
married.
she became a
Like a
an old
spinster
maid.
librarian, yeah.
Yeah, like all of a sudden she's put it like she looks like she's like 10 years older than what she like so she aged more because she didn't get married. But
And
yeah, it's
the whole town has just kind of become, bars everywhere, dance halls, burlesque shows.
yeah, it looks like the seedy portion of Vegas.
Hmm.
uh yeah, and everything's run by Potter because you didn't have the buildings and loan to where George Bailey would help people who were in dire need and couldn't make their payments and stuff, and he helped them out. So then he had a plot of land that had a bunch of houses, so instead that's a cemetery now, so just to be more depressing.
And that's where we find out about, his brother Harry. And that's probably, I guess, the emotional linchpin of this, where he finally realizes, wait a minute, yeah, you weren't there to save him, so no one was there to save the transport ship.
Yeah.
All these people died, Carrie couldn't save them because you couldn't save Harry. And that's kind of the big moment.
Yeah, and then he's finally like, no, I take it back. I want to be alive. They bring him back, and he goes and wakes up and the cop sees him on the bridge and he's like, "Oh, you remember me, Bert? Oh, yay! Merry Christmas, Bedford Falls! Yay!"
And it is very sweet, and I think it's earned.
It is, and then you get the one scene that everyone remembers at the very end when the whole town pulls together and helps him raise that money back up.
Even the bank examiner throws in some money.
Yes, and then the plastics Wainwright, the hee haw guy. I didn't get the whole hee haw thing.
I don't know either.
I don't
I
know.
just,
Was that something they did back then? I don't know.
maybe it's
Uh,
just a character choice.
but he gives him $25,000, and so they're able to save the bank, and the town is all better again. So
And then Zuzu got over her cold.
Susan got over. Yeah, she didn't have a. I don't have a fever anymore. No fever. I got a fever. No, no, the cure is
Where,
more cowbell.
where are you going with this?
She must have got some cowbell.
You're starting to lose the thread with me, buddy. Come on, stay focused.
Yeah, and then a bell rings, and we learned from Clarence that when a bell rings, an angel's getting his wings. So then Jimmy's all like, "Oh, Clarence got his wings
Atta boy, Clarence.
because a bell on the tree rings." My teacher says every time a bell rings, an
Oh, come on.
angel
She's
gets her.
cute. You know she's cute. She's
It is. No, it is cute, and it's a
also
good ending.
I do like Clarence's thing for like the Adventures of Tom Sawyer.
Yeah. So, yeah, wonderful film.
Yeah, it's definitely still well deserving of its reputation, I think.
And I think, I was talking earlier about this being a Christmas film. I don't get it because it's kind of like one of those where it's like, yeah, it's Christmas at the end.
It's set at Christmas for like the last 20 minutes.
Yeah, like literally, it's the very end as they stand in front of a Christmas tree. Yeah, before he wants to kill himself, and even then, when he goes to jump off the bridge and like he finds out what life
It's
was
still,
like without it,
yeah, it's
it's
still
not
Christmas
Christmas
Eve.
anymore.
Yeah, because it stopped snowing. So,
But it was nominated for Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Director, Best Sound, and Best Editing.
and it won 0.
And 1-0. And speaking of the snow, apparently they got like some sort of honorary award for creating like this new kind of fake snow, because apparently before that in Hollywood they would use like small cornflakes or something like that, but they had to record audio separately because it was so crunchy.
Yeah, because when you're stepping on cornflakes,
Yeah, and so they're like, no, we want to hear the audio from the actual scene. So they created some sort of mix that they put it in a giant fan to, lightly snow all over the place, and they got some sort of award for that science behind all that and stuff. So
neat.
just kind of interesting. And someone was talking about might have been one of Capra's kids, might have been Frank Capra Jr. How this was all one big set, and at the time it was they said it was one of the longest sets ever built for a Hollywood movie because
Hmm.
they built the entire street. And like if you look at the set when he runs into Bedford Falls, it's one street that goes way down, and that was all built for this. And apparently during like the snow, when he's running through the snow, it was like 90 degrees. Everybody's bundled up and running through fake snow.
Yeah.
But yeah, so oh, and also one thing to mention, since we're a couple of Iowa boys, Donna Reed is from Denison, Iowa. So
Hmm.
shout out to a fellow Iowan.
Also, a special shout out to my dad, who's a bank examiner.
Nice.
A bank examiner for many years. So this was one of the few movies that had a bank examiner in it. Nobody makes movies about bank examiners.
No, that's I, I guess not. Um, I don't know what else to. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about this movie. It's a classic for a reason,
Hmm. Still good. Still holds up. Still a good message.
and uh, and again, Jimmy Stewart, wonderful
Never
actor.
trust those evil bankers. I mean, I think that's fair enough even today. So,
Yeah, as much as there's all of that, there's always this hope inlaid in all of his movies,
hmm
Capra's movies. So go out and watch this one if you haven't seen it.
Yep, go out and watch this one. And if you're listening to this on the day it's released, we wish you Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays from us here.
Indeed. All of the holidays, all of the happiest of holidays.
Mm-hmm.
And
Like a pirate day.
what's that?
Happy Talk Like a Pirate Day.
Yar. What would you recommend to go along with this movie?
Um, I'd say probably something like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, another Frank Capra, Jimmy Stewart movie.
Okay, yeah, you took what I was going to do also, and agreed. It's another Jimmy Stewart Capra movie, and it's about one man who's a good man who fights the good fight against the bigger thing and comes out victorious, and like just gives you just some hope. So gives you hope for humanity. That's what Frank
Mm-hmm.
Capra films do.
We can always use more of that.
Indeed. Especially after this year, everything that's happened in 2020, it's a good thing to have a little hope.
Agreed.
Anyway, uh let us know what you think of the movie. Comment below and follow us on Twitter at AwesomeKM.
I'm at Noah_Saturn, SATERN.
And we're on Instagram at We Don't Know What to Watch.
Until then, fire Uncle Billy.
I'm sending out a petition to fire Uncle Billy. We need 2,000 signatures.
Where's the money, Uncle Billy? Where's the money?
Where's my $8,000?
I just think of the John Mulaney bit where he does that. It's like, "Where's the money, you fat Stay down on the ground. Stay down on the ground."
What was the Dana Carvey lost ending to? There was an SNL skit with Dana Carvey that was, and I don't remember how it went. I should have watched it again. That was like the lost ending to "It's a Wonderful Life." So
I do like the fact that after he lost his business, Uncle Billy ended up in the insane asylum. So, yeah, I can see that.
keep him away. You give him different jobs. Keep him away from the actual money.
Mm-hmm. Don't let
Give
him
him
touch
something
the money.
that's not going to make the business go out of business.
Agreed.
All right. Well, happy holidays to all.
Fire Uncle Billy.
Fire Uncle Billy.